Hi, everyone. Welcome to Mind Over Mountain with me, Cheryl Strayed. Today, my guest is the amazing Katherine Legge, who makes a living at speeds that most of us truly cannot imagine. She's a race car driver in racing series across many platforms: IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, Indianapolis 500, Formula E. She also is the host of Throttle Therapy, another podcast here on the iHeart Women's Sports Network. It's a wonderful podcast, so give it a listen. In our conversation today, we talk about fear and fearlessness, about learning how to trust your instincts, about hitting walls, both metaphorically and literally, and how to keep going even when it hurts. We also answer a Dear Sugar letter from a woman who wants to know how to be brave. Let's listen to my conversation with Katherine. Katherine Legge, welcome to Mind Over Mountain.
Thank you so much for having me on the show.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. And I think I'm specifically really interested in talking to you because the sport you're engaged in, racing cars, is so outside of my experience. You have driven all kinds of different cars and different kinds of races, from IndyCar to IMSA to Formula E to Indianapolis 500. But the thing they always have in common is they go really, really fast, like 200 miles an hour plus fast. Mm-hmm. What's the fastest you've driven? And tell us about that experience.
Well, so yesterday I was on 75 and I was doing a solid 72 miles an hour. I think the fastest that we actually drive over the vast array of cars that I've driven, as you mentioned, is probably Indy 500. And that would be from a average speed and a top speed. Top speed is going to be like 240 miles an hour in qualifying, and the average speed's well over 200. So it seems fast to the average person, but we're not doing that on normal roads, right? We have walls that are very close to you, which actually makes it feel safer because you have less far to go to hit them. And I know that sounds incredibly wild to say out loud, but it's almost as if you're in a tunnel. And everybody else is going at relatively the same speeds, within a couple of miles an hour of each other, hopefully. So the closing speeds aren't that great, and everybody's going in the same direction. So it's not like you're doing that on the highway. Also, you've kind of trained your whole career to work your way up through the ranks, where you start off in a car that will do 80 miles an hour, and then you'll do 120. And so you'll kind of get that. The time that you notice that it is that fast is when you have to brake and you have to slow down for pit lane. And you do pit lane at, like, depending on where and how, it's 60 miles an hour or 40 miles an hour. And when you're slowing down, coming off the banking, you transition from like a big degree of banking to flat, which unsettles the car. And then you're asking it to slow down as hard as possible. So imagine slamming your brakes on in your road car. And then imagine that force being about 10 times what you've panicked, you've hit the brakes, and you're holding the steering wheel. You slow down about 10 times faster than that. So that is by far, I think, even the acceleration you can get your head around, but the braking is what, when people go on passenger rides, is what freaks them out the most, I think.
I understand you started when you were like 8 or 9. You first discovered this sport then. Can you tell us about that? How did you come to it?
I found go-kart racing, and I say I found it. My parents, my family really, went on vacation to Spain, and my dad and my uncle.
Translate your like British to American. Holiday means vacation.
Well, holiday over here means like Christmas and Thanksgiving and things like that. But this was just a basic vacay, and we drove out to Spain actually, and that part I don't remember, weirdly. And I get really badly car sick, which is another very strange thing. But anyway, I digress.
Interesting.
I know. I was not tall enough at 9 or 8 then to have a go on the go-karts, and my dad and my uncle did. And I was blown away, fascinated, awe-inspired by these go-karts. Mm-hmm. And we got back to England after the vacay, and my dad saw an advert in the local paper for our local go-kart track. And so we went along. My dad actually got a go-kart, and I nagged him so much that for Christmas that year, he bought me a little kids cart, and we did a couple of races together. And then he quit because he thought if he gets hurt when I'm there, or if I got hurt, and I loved it so much, he got just as much enjoyment out of watching me do it. And so literally every weekend from then on, my dad would pull me out of school on a Friday and we'd go-kart racing. My dad and I were very, very close, are very, very close and bonded over it. And it was something that we shared this passion for, strangely out of nowhere. I mean, so much so that he gave up smoking to be able to pay for my go-kart tires because we weren't wealthy.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And
that's kind of sweet.
My dad was very much of the mindset, like, I don't want to push you to do this. I don't want to be baseball dad, the typical dads that push their kids.
What was that experience like for you as a girl? And especially, I want to say, as a teenager, where I think it can be really, you already feel like, the odd girl out, like most of us feel that way.
I still feel that way.
I do too, but I think we all do. But what I'm asking is, I'm curious if the experience of being like one of the few girls in a very male-dominated sport as a young woman, as a teenager, was a confidence builder or a confidence depleter. Did it make you feel more insecure and more scared and more, wanting to be accepted, or did you feel the opposite way? And you were like, "Hey, I'm here and I'm proud and doing it," or both?
I think it's a little bit of both, but more depleted. I would say when I was 9 through 11-ish, you don't really know the difference between girls and boys. You're just kids, right?
Right.
Back then, I mean, I know they grow up much faster these days, but I didn't really notice it until the parents got involved. And then it was the little things like, oh, I can't believe you got beat by a girl. And it was that kind of thing that started it off. And then when you start to get hormones and you start to go into your teenage years, they're not your friends anymore because then they see you as a girl and you see them as a boy. And so teenage years were very difficult. I was very shy as a kid. So I still am. I still find it uncomfortable sometimes going up to strangers and people that I don't know and sparking conversations and asking for things. And so, my dad would tell me to go to the vendor that sold parts for go-karts. He'd say, go and ask for an 86 sprocket because we needed it. And I'd be terrified to go and ask for this sprocket and hand over the money. But yes, I always, to this day, many, many years later, still very much feel like the odd one out. And I can only describe that to people who haven't been in that environment, that it's like going to a gym, or it's like going to the gym 10 years ago before it became, popular for women too. And seeing all these big burly guys grunting and you doing a workout feeling like they're whispering at you behind your back and they're making fun and you feel very, very self-conscious. And so even now, it happened when I did NASCAR last year. My first foray into the NASCAR world, I very much felt like I stood out like a sore thumb, even though for the majority of my career, I think it's been very hard for me to find a balance between being true to myself and authentic and feminine, but also just trying to be one of the guys and do what they do and be respected for that and not play on the fact that I'm a woman, but acknowledge the fact that I'm a woman. And so it definitely lends itself to this whole other range of variables and worries and concerns and all the things that you don't have as a guy. And also, when you are spending your weekends with them and you're thinking about racing 24/7, like I hadn't ever worked with a woman, like as in a work environment until last year, really. I mean, we have women in PR, but there really weren't that many. I had one woman engineer once. She was awesome. But there really aren't that many women in racing. So I find myself, and I was having this discussion with a very dear friend of mine the other day, find myself acting like a man sometimes, and I don't necessarily want to. Because it can
what
be
does
slightly
acting like
abusive.
a man mean to you?
Well, so I think I likened this on the podcast that you did with me on Throttle Therapy. I likened this to being in the military or something, because we communicate via abuse, right? Like my love language is to make fun of you. And women typically don't like that very much.
Right.
And so, you'd be like, okay, dumbass. And I said that to one of my girlfriends the other day, and she looked at me like I'd killed her puppy. And I was like, oh, sorry, my audience, wrong environment.
You got like code switch.
Yeah.
But that's what you've had to do to survive in that male-dominated world. Can you think of any times in your career that you've sort of stepped forward and done the opposite, where you've been like, I reject this male-dominated way of being or thinking or approaching this, and I am going to bring really my most authentic self forward, myself as a woman, race car driver?
Yes. And it was a very clear defining moment for me. And that was 2 years ago. And it's when I had Elf come on board as Indy 500 primary sponsor. And I was like, oh, okay, makeup. I'm now crossing over that line that I never crossed before. They wanted to have a pink car, and I was like, no, please don't have a pink car. That's so cliche. I'm going to hate it. Everybody's going to be like, oh, look at the girl in the pink car.
Right.
And
you have to wear a lace bustier or something, right?
Right. Yeah. And I fought it every step of the way. And I also am vehemently against segregation in racing, right? There's a women-only series. There's women who use the fact that they're women to get along in racing. I think you should be professional, and whether you're male, female, black, white, it's indifferent. Like, do the job that you're there to do. And so I was always of that kind of very, very black and white, no gray area lines. And then the pink car thing, and I literally was dreading it. And I turn up at Indy, and it was the best thing that ever happened, not to me personally, but also it changed the face of racing. Like there was this whole girl power. I hate all these cliches, but there's this girl power movement where all the fans, all the women, Elf did some really cool activations where they were giving away lip gloss and stickers and like drive like a girl magnets, and they did a drone show. And so everybody got on board with it, and they dragged their dads and their husbands and their brothers to the Elf activation. They saw the pink car. They were all wearing pink jerseys. And there was this sea of 9-year-old Catherines of the future that were like, cool, I can do anything. And so it honestly makes me want to tear up even now, because I had never entertained the idea that would be powerful. I thought that would be negative, because I thought that being seen as a girl was negative in some way, shape, or form, right?
And then you stepped into it.
Yes.
And realized its power. Yeah.
And so since then, I've been me.
We're talking about the sport itself being male dominated, but what about the fan base? What has the response from male fans been to you, and fans who are women? What do they make of you, and have you had different responses based on the gender of the fan?
Very much so. And actually that changed with the demographic of transitioning to NASCAR last year also. So up until that transition, I would say it's becoming more and more a family sport. More and more women are partaking in it. And I would credit that to a Netflix show called Drive to Survive, where Formula One wasn't even on the American radar until this Netflix show came out. And it's like what do they call it? Where they follow the drivers around, docu-series thing.
Reality TV docu.
Reality TV. Thank you.
kind of fictional sometimes, but yeah.
Right. But the women got into it because they were like, oh, he's handsome. They don't realize that most drivers are 5 foot tall, but they they kind of started this whole interest in racing that wasn't there before. Really, all we had was NASCAR and the Indy 500. So that spiraled, and now it's like 43 roughly percent female audience, which is bonkers because when I started 20 years ago, it was 18%, right? Absolutely insane. And so there is no reason why women can't love racing. They just weren't really exposed to it because it was seen as a male sport.
Yeah. They weren't invited to the party.
Right. Yeah, basically. I mean, if you look, there was a couple of women who came before me, and Janet Guthrie being really the first. There was no women allowed in the pits. There was no women's bathrooms in the paddock. There was, that was really tough back then when she was there. But what blows my mind more than anything is when I made the transition to NASCAR, I got a lot of hate from both men and women. And I expected it from the men. She belongs in the kitchen. Women shouldn't be driving. I mean, I had a bad first NASCAR Cup race, and I literally got death threats from it.
Oh, my goodness. But back up and explain, why in particular would you doing NASCAR bring about that kind of hate? As opposed to the other racing you were doing before that?
Because it was the first time in a while that they had a woman in NASCAR. Before that, there was Danica Patrick. She's been retired for a few years now, I think. And she got just as much hate when she was driving. I think there is still this very misogynistic view by a lot of NASCAR fans and IndyCar fans, but they were kind of used to me, so they weren't vocal about it anymore.
They'd say like, okay, that's that Katherine Legge woman.
Yeah, that's the chick.
And now NASCAR, they're like, and then you come out of the gate and your first race didn't go well.
It did not go well. I spun it was in Phoenix. I spun coming off turn 2 and collected one of the leaders. And so, the NASCAR fans were not happy about that. I turned around a lot of their opinions through the course of the season when we had some good results. And I feel like we earned their respect, which was great. But the really disappointing thing about that was the women that came after me, because they didn't think that I belonged. And I just wondered what would make somebody so miserable in their own life that they felt the need to bring another woman down because they've got to have been through the same thing. Well, not necessarily the same, but similar things, right? And so they could relate being a woman, and they still had that opinion. And I got the dude thing because I've had that my whole career, but I did not get the women not sticking together thing. Because in my experience, it's been very much like, there's only a couple of us. We better make this good. Yeah.
How did you respond to that? I mean, did you make any public response to that kind of hate? And also just inside yourself in your private life, how did you take care of yourself? Because I know how painful that is. I think anyone in any field who has a public presence, and especially in the ruthless world of social media, one misstep and people are very happy to come after you. How did you respond publicly, and also how did you heal privately?
I've gotten a pretty thick skin over the years, and most of it doesn't even fuel me to be better or carry on or any of the things that people say. It was kind of like water off a duck's back, because I knew in my mind that I was going to do good things. And then that opinion to reasonable people who could, debate whether something was good, bad, or indifferent. Yes, I had a horrible race. Did I deserve to be vilified for it? Maybe a little bit. But when I did good, a lot of those people also turned around. So that, to me, that's fine. The barrage of abuse was so large. I mean, I was shielded from it for the most part, but it was so many things. Some of them being quite clever. Like one guy sent me he found me on Venmo or PayPal or something, and he did like a request for wasting money on a ticket or something like that. I was like, actually, that's quite funny. And there was just so much of it that it made me kind of giggle, and I was like, okay, this is good because I'm getting a lot of visibility from this. So as long as I do turn it around, I was kind of unbothered. But then I actually didn't want to give it a voice, and I didn't want to address it. But my team said that I have a responsibility to address it. So I did it on my podcast because they said that there were other young girls going through similar things in different sports and in different arenas,
Right.
and that I have a voice to be able to help them understand, know that they're not alone, and maybe combat it for young people in the future to see, what it does when you behave like that. And so,
And do you think that was the right call? I mean, do you agree with your team in the end?
I don't know. I was kind of guilted into it because I was like, oh, the poor Catherines of the future.
The Catherines of the future need the Catherine of now to step forward.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it was good, bad, or indifferent. NASCAR, to their credit, stood by me. They were wonderful. The team stood by me. Elf stood by me. And they all kind of said, this is unacceptable. I think it got to when people were telling me to kill myself and that they were going to kill me, and there was a policeman posted up outside my house. It got to the point where, yeah, I probably should have, looking back on it now, though, it doesn't really even evoke any emotion apart from a little bit of, that was an interesting period in my life.
It sounds to me like it hurt your feelings and upset you, but at the end of the day, you pretty quickly went to a place. I imagine you have to go a lot when you're in the car at 200 and some miles an hour, and you have to maintain your equanimity and your sense of mission and calm. And I would love to get inside of that a bit. One of the things that I learned a lot about in my research about race car driving, which I did because I knew I was going to talk to you, is really, first of all, there are so many layers of preparation that you have to go through. They are physical to a greater degree than I knew. I'd love for you to tell us about that, and also mental. And I want to hear about that too. So how do you prepare to get behind the wheel of a car, a race car?
A lot of preparation is an experience as well. You know what you need to do, and it just becomes second nature, both physically and mentally and emotionally also, because I think I started off being a very emotional driver. Women tend to be more emotional than men anyway. And I had to learn to temper that. And I didn't necessarily process those emotions in any way, shape, or form, but I learned to turn them into something different. So, like when I got choked up or I wanted to cry or anything like that, I would turn that then into anger, right? Because there's no crying and racing. Like I could not show weakness like that.
But that's interesting because anger is an emotion too. So when you say you're an emotional driver, you mean the emotions that we really think of as female, it sounds to me.
Kind of, yeah. So I got advice early on in my career, which was be a robot, by a very good friend of mine. And he said that because if you're making decisions at 200 miles an hour from an emotional place, they are not the best decisions. If you immediately react, then you put yourself at risk of crashing into somebody or spinning out or doing something bad. So you have to learn to channel those emotions and decide which ones are productive or not. And a lot of the best drivers are the ones that are really cool and work from a position of subconscious, not even your conscious mind, because your conscious mind is not as fast as your subconscious mind. And if you drive angry or sad or depressed or anything else, like it affects your driving. Because I found at the beginning of my career, I always drove better when I was happy. And so there are a lot of mental coaches in racing too. I have a fantastic one called Gloria. And
what has she taught you? What does a mental coach help a race car driver do exactly?
It's a bit like having a physical coach too. It's like, now I know what to do. And my gym routine's pretty easy and pretty set because, as you said, like physically, it's a lot harder than you would imagine. The cars are 130 degrees inside and you're wearing fireproof underwear and sweating. And so you have to be strong and fit. My heart rate's at 180 beats per minute for like 3 hours. Yeah,
really?
Probably it's a bit fast, but yeah. So you have to be endurance and strong, and your core has to be strong. You're pressing 1,000 pounds worth of pressure on a brake pedal. So it's way more physical than you can imagine. And mentally, it's the same. Like when you have things coming at you at 200 miles an hour and you have to make decisions, you don't have time to think. And when you're doing pit stops, when you're arguing with your crew because they've told you something that you don't agree with, when you crash or make a mistake and the whole team is relying on your performance because they've done a flawless job, when they've made a mistake and you want to be angry because you had a good shot of being on the podium that race, there's so many things that come into play. But for me, the biggest thing that I worked on early on in my career more than anything was the almost like self-sabotage, like how you talk yourself into or out of things and how you have to fake the confidence and believe in yourself before you even believe in yourself. And you have to just keep telling yourself over and over until you actually believe it, because I had a whole bunch of insecurities, just like most teenage girls, right? If you look at, I'm racing against all men, I'm the only girl, and you look at, we're just coming out of go-karts into professional ranks. You take 10 teenage boys, 18-year-old boys, they think they're God's gift to racing. They think they know everything. They're uber confident. And then there's me, and I'm like, I don't know anything, and I hope I'm good enough, and I really hope I don't make a fool of myself, and all these things. It's just a completely different framework. So you have to treat that as such. And so I learned some strategies to let go of those negative thoughts and to basically program my brain into, you got this.
Since we are talking about fear, I think now is a great moment for me to share with you a really interesting Dear Sugar letter I received.
Oh, yes. I can't wait.
I know. That's about just this very topic.
Okay.
I'm going to read it to you, okay? Dear Sugar, I was happy to hear about your new podcast featuring so many brave women because courage is what I need most. I celebrated my 70th birthday last year, and 6 months ago, I became a widow. I live alone for the first time in more than 40 years. Of course, I'm grieving the loss of my husband, and I've had to make many adjustments. One of those adjustments is I'm trying to venture out more than I used to and do new things. That's what I want to ask you and your guest about today. Can I learn to be brave? There are many things I would like to do and can do if I choose to, but I find myself hesitating because I am afraid. For example, I've always wanted to go on a safari in Africa. You could say it's a lifelong dream, and now there is nothing stopping me but myself. I know there are many tours I could join, and I'm in good health, and I even have a friend who's also a widow who would go with me. What has held me back is I worry about whether it's safe or not to travel to such remote places, and I wonder about what I'd do if something went wrong. Another example is that a friend invited me to join her singing group. She's always raving about how wonderful this group is and how much fun they have. And though I'm interested in exploring it, I'm afraid that I'm not a very good singer. My friend assures me everyone is welcome and no one cares about being good, but I fear I would go and then be too self-conscious to sing. I feel silly writing this letter, and I guess you won't answer it, but it helped me to write it anyway. Maybe listening to the courageous women you interview will inspire me to be more brave. But if you have any direct advice for me, I would welcome it. Thank you. Signed, 70 and Scared.
Oh, it makes me want to cry.
I know.
That's adorable.
It's so sweet and so real, because
so real.
I think the first thing I want to say to 70 and Scared, and then, Katherine, I really want your perspective, but you're not alone. Like most of us we're afraid of something, and I think that being afraid and learning how to be brave is this lifelong process. And we're all at different stages, we're afraid of different kinds of things. And so I just want to assure you, yes, it is possible to be brave. And I'm going to guess that you agree with me about that, Katherine.
I do. But I also think it's a muscle that you train, right? So for me, I am the same way. I can't believe I'm admitting this on air, but like I would hate to go and sit at a restaurant by myself and get dinner, right? It terrifies me. So I go and get coffee and make sure I put my phone down, and I train myself up to that point. I would not sing, but I can't sing.
I bet you can. I bet you can. Maybe you and 70 and Scared can,
I want to go on the safari with her. I don't necessarily want to go singing with her. But I think a large part of me training that muscle is doing it anyway, right? Like if you know, like I've jumped out of airplanes before and I'm terrified, but I know once I take the step, that's it. And I will be super proud of myself and I'll enjoy it and I'll do all the things. So it's about doing it anyway. Like you just got to take that step. And I mean, as far as the singing goes, so go join the group. And if you don't sing, you don't sing. Like have some fun. You're never going to look back and regret making an ass. Can I say that? An ass of yourself. You're going to look back and regret all the things that you didn't do and the fun that you didn't have. Like we don't know what tomorrow brings. Like do all the things. I just make yourself do them. Like it's a muscle. It's like discipline. You know, you don't want to get up and go to the gym at 6 o'clock every morning. However, if you do it consistently for like 6 weeks, guess what? It's not hard anymore. Like take that first step. Oh, that's a you thing.
That's a me thing. That's take the first step. And gosh, I mean, I feel like everything you just said, I'm just, yes. It's absolutely a muscle. And this has come up in my life on a couple of fronts, but one of them, people are always asking me for writing advice, and they'll say, "Oh my gosh, when they read Wild, how are you so brave to tell like the full, honest truth of your life and things that would seem embarrassing to say, to put down on paper about yourself." And what I always say is like, it wasn't like I just came out of nowhere and wrote Wild. I had been apprenticing myself to the craft of writing for decades. I'd been a writer for many years, and those first stories and essays I wrote in my early 20s where I was a little bit brave, and then I got braver and braver and braver until now, like writing's not scary to me in that way anymore, because what I know is I can do it. And I know that when I'm brave, it makes me feel alive and happy. And 70 and Scared, that is what Katherine's saying to you too, is like you'd go and maybe you show up at the singing group and you don't sing the first 4 times, or maybe you hum, or, and then you join in. And same with this, you know what? It is an adventure to go to Africa on a safari. It is outside of your comfort zone. But what we know is that you can do it, and you will be so much happier if you try than if you never take the risk, because you'll be trapped in the cage of your own making, which you yourself have said, the only thing keeping you from doing it is you. And what we're saying is, right. Come on, sister, join us here. And you don't need our permission. You need to give yourself permission.
The other thing I think I'll add to that is, as you get older, like just referencing her age, you get more comfortable and you stop going out of your comfort zone. And I just had this experience. I was in Tahoe skiing with a friend of mine. And I was like, you used to be able to do this stuff. Like, what is it mentally that's stopping you? And she's like, you know what, you're right. And she did it anyway. And she was so happy because she got back to what she was doing before. And it's like in every aspect of our life, we get comfortable and we stop doing the things that scare us. When we're younger, we do the things that scare us. And that's the adrenaline and the motivation to keep going. Yeah. And everybody's different, obviously. But I think that you should maybe think, what would 20-year-old you say to 70-year-old you now? Like, come on, you got this. Like, just do it. Just do it. Thanks,
That's
Nike,
a great way of thinking of it. And, Katherine, I think that one of the key aspects of giving good advice is really listening and really paying attention to the words that the letter writer uses. And in this case, I do want to just say, I think there's something to that, going back to your 20-something self, because 70 and Scared, you say, like, you are grieving your husband. You haven't lived alone for like 40 years. And here you are now alone. And I think that there is a piece of that in this too, that you got really used to having your life be in partnership with somebody else. You always had that companion, which is a very kind of safe feeling, can be a very safe feeling, right? And then now here you are on your own, and you're making some moves in the direction of going solo, venturing solo, whether it be to the singing group or to Africa. Yeah. And it's okay that like it takes, as you say, some adjustment and that you have some hesitation. What we're trying to say is don't live there in the hesitation.
Absolutely. I think if you also set a timeline to it, that always helps me. So if you say like steps in a timeline. So, okay, by next Tuesday, I'm going to have booked a 4-day trip to the other side of the country solo, just to see if I can do it. And then this is going to be next August, and I'm going to book it by this time, and we're going to do that by this time, and like have a schedule and a step-by-step plan in place. Then you'll hold yourself accountable rather than just letting it roll down the road.
Thank you, Katherine. And 70 and Scared, will you please write me again so I know how this turned out, and I will tell Katherine.
Yes.
So we want to know that our advice was taken, because we both feel pretty passionate about this. And if you don't take it, I'm gonna get your address. We're gonna haul you over to Africa and go on safari with you, because that sounds like fun to me.
I'm so in. And I also want to say that I think you're super brave for writing that letter. So you have it. You are brave already.
Speaking of courage, I can't imagine what it must have been like for you after you break both of your legs. I would love to hear about the experiences you've had with crashes. And how is it that you muster the courage to get back into the car again and drive fast again? That to me, again, sounds like a really high mountain to climb, a really terrifying thing.
My first big crash was in 2006, my first year in the big leagues. And it was the equivalent of an Indy car nowadays. And my rear wing delaminated, which means it peeled itself from the end plates. And the rear wing on an Indy car looking beastie keeps it on the ground. It forces the air onto the wing to push it into the ground, very much like the airplanes have wings that create lift. It's the opposite effect, right? So when I lost that downforce, I lost thousands of pounds. I don't know. I think it's probably over 1,000 pounds worth of downforce on the rear wing, which gives you grip. And so the rear, all I remember, I was doing 180 miles an hour, and I suddenly picked up speed heading into a corner. And I didn't know what had happened, but it was like somebody put a rocket on my ass. I was just like taking off.
Oh my God.
And then all of a sudden the rear end switched on me, and I hit the fence at 180. I climbed the fence. It was ethanol fuel back in those days, and you couldn't see the fire. So to me, the fire was terrifying. I've always been scared, especially of ethanol fires, because you can't see them. It's a haze. There's no flames. There's no orange. There's no smoke. So I saw the engine break off, and I remember thinking, okay, that's good, because along with that is the fuel cell and the fire risk and everything else. And I spun through the air and hit the catch fence 30 feet in the air. And I hit my head on the ground as I was rolling along it.
Oh my God.
And like you're protected by a roll cage, but I still felt my head, with my helmet on, obviously, dragging through the dirt. And I thought, okay, this is how it ends, because head injury like kills you. And I think it was subconscious, but I was very much thinking, oh, now I'm fucked.
You really were thinking, I'm about to die.
Yeah, for sure. And it wasn't.
Is that the only thought going through your head? I mean, did you have and then like the whole movie of all the people you loved the most and the beautiful things?
None of that. It was very matter of fact. There was no emotion tied to it. It was just purely like, I'm screwed. I am, kind of thing.
Right.
And then I came to rest, hanging upside down. And my first thought was tell my dad that I'm okay, because he was there, he was watching the race, and I didn't want him to, I get choked up thinking about it.
Yeah.
I didn't want him to think that I wasn't okay. And I didn't really even know that I was okay at that time, because adrenaline, like I didn't know whether my legs still worked or anything. So hanging upside down in this race car. The safety guys were awesome. They were already on the track while the crash was still happening, like getting to me. And I was super bummed, because I was running in sixth in that race, and it was a really good race. It was the best race that I'd had all season, and there's only like 8 laps until the end of the race.
No. So while right alongside, I think I'm going to die, was, damn, I was doing well in this race. Yes. Are you kidding me? Are you actually, is that?
Yes.
Okay.
I told you.
You're right. I kept saying, every time you said screw loose, I'd be like, no, Katherine. But now I agree. Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I've come to terms and peace with my screw loose. And actually, after I broke my legs and I've got hardware in my legs, I had a literal screw come loose that they had to take out, and I could claim for real then. But anyway, they got me out and took me back to the med center, and I told them to radio my dad and tell him that I was okay. And they wouldn't, obviously, because they didn't know that nothing was wrong with me because of the adrenaline. And I get back there and I'm fine, luckily. And they said, can we get you anything? I was like, I'd love a cup of tea. So it was my first year in the States and all I wanted to do was drink tea.
It's so English of you.
I know.
A spot of tea. That's
tea.
My English accent. How do you like that?
It was decent. Yeah, we can work on it, but it was good. Start.
Well, we spot of tea.
That's a bit Scottish.
It's what?
It's a bit Scottish.
Okay. I do have Scottish ancestry. Maybe it's coming
in your
out.
blood.
Yeah, it's in my blood.
And then my dad came into the med center, and I'd never seen my dad cry before in 24 years, and he cried. And so obviously I cried. And I'd held it together until then, like the emotion of going through that. I was fine until I saw him. And
him crying made you cry. And
yeah, 100%.
And
he said, Katherine, for 15 minutes, I didn't know whether you were dead or alive. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry I put you through that. And then we had this whole like come to Jesus thing where he said it would be my fault because I'm the one who got you into racing, and I would blame myself. And I was like, listen, no, if I ever hurt myself racing, I'm doing something that I love to do. And I love that I got into racing. And if I die racing, so be it, because I would do it 1,000 times over. Like, do not blame yourself. And so I feel like that conversation had to be said while I was okay, just in case, you know?
Right.
And then fast forward 15 years probably at that time. And I was testing a prototype in France during COVID, which made my life even more miserable. And I ran over something like a piece of rubber or something on the track, and I hit the wall again over 100 miles an hour. And I found the only concrete wall in the entire place.
Oh my God.
And it pushed the front of the car. So the steering wheel hit me in the helmet, and the pedals were around my thighs. It had come back so much, and it had broken both my legs. And I remember nobody spoke any English. So there was 15 people around the car trying to figure out how they were going to cut me out of this car. And I was getting very claustrophobic all of a sudden. I was like, just put me out. I don't want to know what's going on. You can grind with that angle grinder as much as you want on a car if I'm out of it. So they did. I regret that every day since, because I think that had I stayed with it, I could have helped maneuver myself out, and I probably would have done less damage, right?
Wait a minute. When you say put me out, you mean like knock me out with drugs?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And oh my God, my heart is racing listening to all of this. So you're stuck in this this wrecked vehicle, and you're saying to the French people around you in English, or are you saying this in French?
No, I'm saying it in English, and there's this one guy who's translating, and it's very scary because I'm like, do they know what they're doing? Are they just
you were
French?
scared then. You used the word
petrified. Yes, then I was absolutely scared. I didn't know. I mean, I could feel that one of my legs was at the wrong angle, so I knew that it was broken. So yeah, I was petrified at that point.
So you think them putting you out, then suddenly they're like, you're basically a piece of meat, like a bag of meat, and they're wrenching you out of the car. Whereas if you had stayed alert, you would have been in pain, but you would have been able to.
Exactly. And I really wasn't in pain. That's the really weird thing. Like, adrenaline is wild because I didn't have any pain. My fear mostly was claustrophobia. Like I was like, just get me out, just get me out. And I don't know why I panicked and had that just get me out experience, but I just wanted to be out of that car. And
it was like a psychological feeling of
absolutely. And then I remember waking up butt naked on a steel hospital bed thing coming out of the helicopter. And I remember thinking again, I was like, oh God, how many of the racing people have seen me naked now? I was like, just put me out again. I don't want to have any part in this. So they did. I just want to be out of it.
Forever. Yeah.
Just forever. And then again, my dad gets to the hospital And he's a cautious driver, strangely enough. My mum's not. I definitely get my driving from my mum. And he'd had to drive all the country roads to this hospital in the middle of the French mountains. And he was terrified, petrified that there was something wrong with me. He didn't know what was wrong. Like again, the emotion that I put my poor parents.
Oh
like my
my
mom
God.
hopefully had no idea that any of this was happening.
Yeah.
But my poor dad, I mean, the amount of stuff I put him through. And then again, in the hospital, it was a military hospital. They were wonderful, spoke no English. So I had one team owner who spoke a little English. And it was like broken going backwards and forwards. But it took like 4 days for them to find somebody who could fix my legs. So I was just like laying there, no cast or anything, just waiting for somebody who was able to drill down through both of my legs and put rods and screws and stuff in it. So yeah, good times.
That's something. Yeah, I'm thinking about your parents. I have to say, like, I love, and admire that you are a race car driver. And I think you've you've obviously been a champion and pioneer in that sport. And I'm also, as a mother, really glad that neither of my children are interested in this as a profession or even a hobby. I think you have put your parents through their paces. And even though your father from the beginning, I mean, in so many ways, he kind of introduced you to the sport. I love that your family is such a part of your story, from the very beginning. And it's kind of moving. And I'm thinking, we've used the phrase, or you've used the phrase a few times over the course of our conversation, the little Catherines, because I think, there's that little Catherine in you, the literal girl who found the go-kart racing and said, this is my thing. Yeah. But what about the next generation of women race car drivers? Like, have you played a part? I'm sure you've played a part in nurturing them by simply being a role model to so many of them. I'm curious about, like, what do women, the up and coming women race car drivers, need to get maybe more support than you got in this male dominated sport?
I think having a role model is important, but I think having the support and understanding of how it's different for a woman in racing. And I've had this conversation recently because I'm mentoring a couple of young ladies. Because what I want to be able to do is have somebody to hand over the baton to, right? At the moment, I'm in the last few years of my career, and there is nobody coming up behind me. There was a group of us when there was Danica and me and Simona, and so there was a few of us of our ilk, of our kind of generation. And then after that, nobody. And I really put that down to the formation of the segregating series, which was the F1 Academy now. It was the W Series. And what they did was they take all the promising young female drivers and they race together. So it's like a woman-only series. Mm-hmm. Now, I will say I am all for women's sports. I support women's sports vehemently because I don't think that, women should be playing basketball against the men, right? Like, mm-hmm. There's no reason to have them do that because there are physical differences. And I'm not a feminist really either. I'm just a realist in that racing is one of the only sports where we can compete on a level playing field. As long as we work hard enough at it, we do not need to be separated. There are a lot of sports that strength or stamina or endurance or whatever it is obviously plays a big part.
Right.
Yeah. So with the start of the women-only series, I liked the fact it was giving them opportunities that they wouldn't necessarily have had if not for this series. But I don't like that nobody's progressed out of that series because unless you're racing, competing with the best of the best, it does not force you to be the best. And while me and Danica and Simona and everybody else, Janet, Lynn, Sarah Fisher, we all had to fight and claw and sweat and tears, everything that the guys had to do also to get to the top of whatever respective series we were doing to then progress onto the next level. When they've taken all the women and made it's kind of become a little bit of a gimmick because they've given them way less power, way less speed, way less attention. And they're like a support race for Formula One. And they get a lot of attention and they get a lot of sponsors involved in it, but they don't go anywhere from there. And so
right. It's more like of a sideline act, if you will.
Yeah, it's like sideshow. And so I despise that because these women are very talented. And had they been given the same amount of support to go and race against the guys in the F2 series and the F3 series and the F4 series and, make their way up, then they would be in my position and probably better off, honestly, because they would have had good cars and everything else in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time. Whereas I think the powers that be are, I don't know, I struggle because I don't want to say anything negative about it because I think it's great that they're at least getting some visibility, but I think it's held them back and I am very sad for them. But there are a few that are doing it the hard way and racing against the guys. And I'm actually mentoring a young lady called Lainey Buse, and she's doing a myriad of different series this year, and she's showing great promise. So hopefully, if we keep getting her the experience and the confidence that she needs to progress, then in 3-4 years she'll be ready to take on that mentor. And then there are lots beneath her, but it's a really tough one because I feel like we were making such positive momentum and we were making, it was snowballing down a mountain. There was the the FIA Women in Motorsport Commission that Michelle Mouton headed up. Michelle Mouton is the only woman on the planet that has won on a global stage. And she won in World Rally when it was tough. Like, this chick is she's awesome. Mm-hmm. She is older now, but she was no nonsense. She was everything that I want to be, right? And she won Global Rally, which is harder than any other series really in the world. And she started the Women in Motorsport Commission. And so she got a lot more women involved in karting and coming up through the ranks. And it was when I say snowball down a mountain, it was positive momentum. There was 6 of us at one point in the Indy 500, 6 women out of 33, which is huge percentage.
That's amazing.
Right now, there's just me.
but then, I mean, not all is lost. You're still you're persisting. You're still there. Yes. And you have some time left in you. You mentioned that you feel like in the last few years of your career. What's next? We are on Mind Over Mountain. What is the mountain that your mind is climbing these days? In your life or your career?
Oof, that's a deep question. I think for me this year, it's tricky because I'm not doing everything that I'd hoped and dreamed this year, and it kind of all fell apart very last minute on the NASCAR front, and so I'm fighting to try and get it back together. And I think my Mind Over Mountain moment is more, I love this sport. I've given my life to it, and I've poured everything into it, and it does not love me back at the moment. And so I think it's just persisting through that and finding that passion again for the next generation, because I have to keep motivated and do it for the Laneys of the world, right? So I think it's about not feeling sorry for myself and being like, oh, woe is me, I'm not doing any NASCAR races at the moment, because I know I will be, because I always bounce back. Whereas just I don't know, I don't want to ever feel anything other than very fortunate, and I don't want to feel entitled like it owes me anything, but I do feel like I've given it everything, and I want to go out on a high note over the next however long that is, and have done, I have had some success.
Wonderful. Katherine Legge, thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for being on Mind Over Mountain. It's been a true pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks so much for listening. If you'd like to submit a letter for consideration and advice, please send it to me at deardearsugar@gmail.com. And please do not forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Happy trails, and I'll see you next week. Mind Over Mountain with Cheryl Strayed is an iHeart Women's Sports production, produced by Brittany Brown and Rodney Brown of Barbara Jean Productions. Supervising producer is Kaylin West at Realm. Associate producer, Amaya Brathwaite. Our executive producers are Molly Barton, Jerry Carita, Grace Fuse, and Jesse Katz. Our theme song is composed by Gramoscope Music. Don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Happy trails, and I'll see you next week.